set. Put this over here so make sure that it picks you up. Good. So I shared with you some of the questions that I had. You had some other thoughts as well.
Yeah.
I want to follow whatever format you think is best, but I would love just for you to tell me more about your history and what your childhood was like, and maybe some of your formative experiences, and then maybe the events leading up to the onset of your illness, just so I have some background, if you don't mind.
Well, the first experience I had with mental illness was at the age of 8 years old.
8.
And I would dissociate.
Really? Yeah.
Yes. What would happen would I would lose consciousness, but I was actually functioning, talking, doing everything normal.
Yeah.
But I wasn't conscious. I had no idea what was going on, where I was. But what would happen was, what would take me out of that state would I would hit something, like bump into a telephone pole, and then I'd snap out of it. So that was the first experience that I had with mental illness at the age of 8.
When that happened, did other people around you notice that something was wrong?
My brothers, but they would laugh because they had no idea what it was.
Got it. Okay.
Back then, people just didn't know what dissociation was.
Sure.
I don't know if they saw it in a movie somewhere.
Right.
Like the movie Sybil.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of people now don't even understand it, but back then I'm sure they didn't.
Well, a lot of people now think schizophrenia is dissociation.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of misunderstanding around mental illness generally.
Yeah.
So 8 years old, okay.
Yes.
And did that continue over a period of years? Did it eventually stop? How did that unfold?
Let me see. It didn't come back until the age of 18. Okay. Maybe. Well, 18 was when I had my first hospitalization.
18.
Yes. And to backtrack a bit, I started smoking marijuana at an early age. Now, that was due to peer pressure.
Okay.
So I was trying to fit in
Sure.
everyone, but it was my enemy. Yes. It made my psychosis.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes people will turn to marijuana or any drugs for relief, but it sounds like it didn't give you relief.
No. It made me psychotic.
The opposite. Oh, okay.
Completely psychotic.
How old were you when that happened?
18.
18, okay.
But when I got, if I were to smoke marijuana today, because it has happened to me, after the age of 18, it wouldn't take much, maybe 5 puffs, and in 5 minutes I would be completely psychotic.
Really?
I mean, suicidal, ready to kill myself,
wow.
hysterical.
Really?
They had to tie me down, give me a needle, just to bring me out of that psychosis. So at this point, I know, and I'm well aware that marijuana, any type of drug, is my enemy, including alcohol.
And you've been clean of any drugs and alcohol for many years, right?
Almost 27 years now.
Fantastic. Well, you learned the hard way just how dangerous it can be for you, especially.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So, but let me see. Any other questions you have? I'm good.
Sure.
I am.
Yeah,
I'm good with.
I have a few, and certainly anything that you want to share or interject would be welcome. I know you'd mentioned in the summary you sent me that when I began to experience severe symptoms, maybe when you were a little bit older, that you couldn't live at home anymore, that your mother put you out,
yes.
and you were homeless, and were eventually hospitalized, had encounters with the police. Before that happened, when you were a teenager, let's say, before 18, when you used pot and started experiencing that psychosis, were things okay at home? Would you describe your childhood or your adolescence as typical or atypical? I mean, how was your...
It definitely wasn't typical.
Wasn't typical, okay. How so?
My father was very physically abusive.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the beatings, things like that. And my mother was on the emotional, mental side, the mental abuse.
Okay.
Yeah, so she happens to understand that type of thing because she is a therapist.
Oh, she is?
So she understands what she's doing. She's great at it.
Oh.
Yeah, she's a master manipulator, and she, for some reason, she took her frustrations out on me. I think it was because, I believe that it was because I reminded her of my dad.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I looked like him all my life. I was told I was going to be like him, which I never was. I never turned out to be abusive towards women. But I guess just looking like him, things like that, was the reasoning behind why I was abused so much mentally. Yeah, she took her frustrations out of me.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 6.
Okay.
One passed away.
Oh.
Yes.
Brothers and sisters?
I had the one that passed away was my brother.
Okay.
But altogether, 3 brothers and 3 sisters.
Got it. Okay.
Now just 5 left.
Got it. Okay. And do you have contact with any of them?
Just my daughter.
Okay.
That's
Your
it.
daughter. Okay.
Just my daughter.
How old is she?
28.
Oh, okay. So.
Yes.
And where does she live?
She lives in Las Vegas.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
You have contact with her. That's good.
Yes.
What does she do?
She works for a tech company.
Oh, okay.
I believe she's a sales rep because they send her like all over the United States for business, things like that. And she's also going back to school. She wants to get her master's in social work.
Oh, really?
Yes, she already has a bachelor's in psychology.
Gotcha.
Yes, so
good for her.
that's one good thing I did right.
Well, I'm sure you were a very good father, as good as you could be. I mean,
I tried.
Obviously, had carried a lot in your life, so
yes.
I'm sure you were a wonderful father, all things considered.
I tried.
I'm sure she's very happy to have you in her life as much as she can.
Yes, definitely.
When you started to experience your illness, if I understood correctly, that was around the time you were 18?
Yes. Actually, before is when I started hearing voices.
Yep.
That was like that was the first time I was hospitalized.
Oh, okay.
I was having symptoms long before that.
Got it.
But around 17, 18 is when it started getting really bad.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And you mentioned that you had a period of homelessness. Clearly were in the throes of illness and struggling. At what point did you enter treatment, and at what point did the treatment begin to be helpful in terms of relieving your symptoms or helping you to stabilize a bit?
At the age of 19.
Okay.
My first hospitalization, I was 18, but I was very non-compliant. I did not take medications. I didn't want to take medications. I was still smoking marijuana.
Okay.
But at the age of 19, when I had 19 is when I had the actual most traumatic experience at the age of 19. And since the age of 19, I've been on medications.
Okay.
Now, I wasn't always compliant with therapy, but I did take my medication.
Take your medication.
Yeah, because I knew that if I didn't, then all bets are off.
Was the medication helpful right away, or did you have to go through a period of
trial
trial and
helpful
error?
right away.
Well, good.
Yes,
I'm glad
it
to hear
took
that.
me out of my psychosis within a week or 2.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you stay on more or less the same medication?
I stayed on Prolixin. I've been on Prolixin the whole time.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah.
And that worked for you right off the bat, and you've been on that ever since?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. And do you experience any side effects from that?
I do.
Okay. And you take medication for that?
Dyskinesia.
Got it. Okay.
You can hear it in my voice. You can see it in my movements.
Okay.
So that is something that has developed over the years.
Sure.
I actually stopped reciting poetry because of it, but I've taken a leap of faith today, and I'll be reciting a couple poems that I wrote.
You know, that brings me to a question I was going to ask, because when I listened to the poems that you had posted on your website, I think there were 7 or 8 in total, and I know you had recited most of them, but there was a woman who recited 2 of them.
Well, actually, that wasn't me. That was actually somebody who narrated my books.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know why I assumed those were you. Okay, I assumed the male voice were yours. Okay, they weren't.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, so you.
I can't read as well.
Got it. Well, it was well done.
Yeah.
And the poetry was fantastic. It would have been great no matter who read it. So got it. So it was a male voice, not yours, for most of them, and then there was a woman's voice for the others. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Interesting. One of the questions I know that I had shared with you that I wanted to ask was about what was helpful to you in your recovery. So clearly medication was, and it sounds like the medication was helpful right off the bat. What else was helpful to you? What else do you think helped you to just stabilize and to rebuild your life as much as you could?
There were like periods of actual recovery, and then there were periods of trauma. There were like I went through a myriad of emotions and experiences, but what happened was I want to say around 1998 when I met a therapist with the Guidance Center in Westchester. We did a lot of good work. That was like the beginning of true recovery for me.
It was in 1998 with that therapist.
Yes.
And how was that therapist helpful to you?
Well, she was understanding, very maternal, like. She listened very well. She didn't judge me or treat me as if she treated me like an individual, not treating me in the same way. So that was the point in my recovery that there was a total switch from abuse to support.
Okay.
Because growing up in the system, as a young man, the system was not as evolved as it is now. And there was a lot of abuse going on within the system coming from practitioners, which also weighed heavy on me and has an effect on me to this day. So the trust issues are there. But I can say that now I have a therapist that I have been seeing since 2017. And the progress we have made, is really, really, really great. The progress that we have made. I trust her. The more that we talk and see each other, the more I trust her. And it's like a progression. She's just been so helpful to me. It's hard to explain. It's like she doesn't treat me. She actually we talk. It's not like I sit there and tell her all my problems and she gives me advice. It doesn't work that way. We actually talk to each other.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll talk about my work, what I'm doing, my poetry, my website, things like that.
Yeah.
We'll spend the whole conversation talking about that.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of one human being talking to another human being. The only thing that I've learned is that we're two human beings, right? We're equal, but she has a job. Just like a doctor has a job, just like a police officer has a job. They do their job. And supposedly the people that they deal with, they're on an equal level. So she's a therapist, that's her job. But as a person, we're the same.
Of course.
Yes.
So glad that you found her and that you have that.
Definitely.
You know, I imagine, based on what you shared with me, you certainly have been subjected to horrible instances of abuse, you know, from your father, your mother in a different way, the system, the police, hospitals. I'm sorry you've had to endure that. Has the therapy been helpful in coming to terms with some of that trauma or addressing some of its impact on you?
Therapy has been great. I mean, the therapy has been the major factor in my recovery and learning how to accept myself for who I am, learning how to interact with other people as well. So it actually helps me with self-image and helps me with how I view the world and how I carry myself in the world as an individual. So therapy really helps so much. I would advise anybody who is having any type of issues to find a good therapist and utilize the therapist. And for people who are just coming into the system, I know how much the denial plays a factor in recovery, because I know I didn't want to believe I had problems. I didn't want to believe that I needed help. But people who are just coming into the system, I would say try to be as compliant as you can. Try to trust someone instead of yourself, or instead of just yourself. I was told once back when I was a young man in the system when I had my first hospitalization, and I couldn't understand it at that time. But one of the therapy aides said to me, he says, Tim, he says, no man is an island. So no man stands alone. We're all a part of something larger than ourselves. And I can understand that now.
It sounds like you've made good use of that advice and have found help in other people.
I've gained so much wisdom being in the mental health system. So much wisdom. And that's what I treasure. I treasure the wisdom that I've received over the years.
So glad. When did you come to Search for Change?
I came to Search for Change in 1985, 2 years after my first hospitalization.
Okay. So you're about, 20 then?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And which program did you live in at first?
I went to Windover for my interview, my intake.
Yep.
And then I went to Glencar.
Okay. Yeah.
And back, I don't want to mention names, I know HIPAA, but there was a great. He was the executive CEO director of Search for Change, but at that time he was the unit director.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure you know who I'm talking about.
Are you talking about Ron?
Oh, are we allowed to say?
Oh, right, absolutely, yeah. Well, first of all, you can say whatever you want because you're not bound by HIPAA, but we're talking about a staff member now, so, you know,
Yes.
it wouldn't be, you know, generally we wouldn't talk about other clients, but we could talk about any staff members. So, Ron Cavanaugh?
Ron Cavanaugh.
Absolutely, of course. Yeah.
I looked up
Ron all day long if you want. No problem with that.
I looked up to him.
A lot of people look up to him, myself included. Yep.
Yes, definitely.
Yep.
And I learned a lot from him. I learned what it was like to grow up and be a man, which I didn't have that knowledge or understanding before then. He helped us with what do you call it? Community meetings. Mm-hmm. We have, like, we would gather in community meetings. We plan cooking, shopping, things like that, cleaning, all these things. We would cook for the whole house, and stuff like that. Yeah. And then, like, we would all get together and we decide what we're going to cook and on what day we're going to cook and how many, how the food that we shop for, things like that. They taught us about hygiene, which I had a problem with back then, and they taught us about cleaning. So I learned all that.
Learning just like life skills, right?
Life skills, yes. And I appreciate that.
Sure.
And then I was moved to Wendover Woods.
Okay.
I met another counselor.
Yeah.
He became my one-to-one, Camilla Joseph.
Sure.
I love Camilla Joseph to death.
As do I. Yeah. She, at this point, she's been at Search for Change as an employee longer than anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I met her when she was the first person I met when I came for my interview.
How neat.
Yes. Yeah. And we've been in contact ever since. She's always been a great supporter of my work.
That's wonderful.
She's the one who got me connected to you. Yes.
Yeah, I'm so glad. So I've known a little bit about your work, but I didn't understand the full depth and breadth of it until she made that connection, and I got to read it and listen to it, and it's just so impressive. But I knew Camilla was one of the shining stars in your life, and she is in mine too, and all of ours.
Yeah.
Search for Change is lucky to have her,
Definitely.
and Ron too. We've been very fortunate.
Yes. Blessed days, but he was a great man.
Yeah.
Very great man.
So you were at Glen Carr, then you went to Wendover, and after Wendover, did you go into supported housing?
I actually went to supported housing in New Rochelle.
Oh, okay.
Then I was changed, but I had a situation, but they changed me to Wendover, and like I had a very it's hard to talk about, but when I was at Wendover Halfway House, I became suicidal. And it's very dangerous when I get suicidal because I actually try to go through with it. And I did.
This is while you were at Wendover?
Yes. And this is another reason why I love Camilla so much, because when they called the ambulance to pick me up and bring me to the hospital, she insisted that she ride in the ambulance with me when they normally wouldn't do that, but she insisted. And she held me while I was unconscious. Yes. And I remember when I went to the hospital that they pumped my stomach to get all the medicine. I had ingested rat poison. Yes. One thing that a lot of people are not aware of is that being suicidal and attempting suicide is not about hopelessness at all. It's about a firm decision that you don't want to be alive anymore. It's not about hopelessness. Hopelessness, it's hard to explain, but it was just It was a firm decision. Nobody could talk me out of it. I just decided that I didn't want to be on this earth anymore.
But were you still in treatment and taking medication at that time?
I was.
Yeah.
But based on my history, my illness is so powerful that it can override the fact that I'm on medication. So it can very ugly head.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, it can do that any given time. Like over the pandemic, I had like 3 major nervous breakdowns.
You did.
Thank God I didn't have to go into a hospital, but I had 3 major breakdowns.
And is there a particular pattern or a sequence of events that triggers it?
That's
what
just
you're
so
aware
dangerous.
Oh, okay.
That's
So
just
it's
so
all
dangerous.
random.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned during the pandemic do you think there was something about the pandemic, maybe the isolation?
The isolation,
yeah.
yes. I had no contact with the outside world, basically.
Yeah.
So I was left to my own thoughts. That's really what happened. But, yeah. So.
A lot of people have, as we know, a lot of people have struggled during the pandemic, and even post-pandemic. We see it in the incidence of anxiety, depression, suicidality. It just seems that it's been such a big stressor for the entire population. But if you have a predisposition to depression or suicidality, it can be especially difficult. I know It's one of the hardest things about the pandemic. We had to maintain social distance to be safe medically, but it's injured us emotionally and psychologically.
Yes.
It's one of the worst things about the pandemic. Have you been feeling better overall since, I won't say the pandemic ended because it hasn't really ended, but we've come to grips with it and have resumed some sense of normalcy? Have you been feeling better since the pandemic has waned or not had the same impact on our lives?
Well, I had a reason to actually stay stable, to be stable, and that was when I published my first book back in 2021.
Okay.
And ever since then, I've been on a mission. It wasn't really so much a conscious thing. It was just the fact that I was busy. I was concentrating on something.
Gotcha.
And I developed a website during that time. Actually, I developed a few websites, but now I have one that I'm keeping for good.
The Poetic Madman?
Poetic Madman.
Okay.
Reason being is my first book is entitled Poetic Madman. So I came up with that name, Poetic Madman, and I've adopted that name, Poetic Madman. Like people online, Facebook, they know me by that name.
They do. Okay.
Yes. They call me Poetic Madman. So I thank God I got that domain.
Fantastic.
Nobody has the domain.
Wonderful. It's a great domain. I'm glad you landed that.
Yeah.
And it's a great site. I really appreciate looking at it and listening to the materials and accessing, your materials on Amazon. What kind of reception have you gotten to your materials and the website? Have people reached out to you? Have readers contacted you? Have you developed an audience?
You would not believe it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've heard it. I would believe it, actually. I'm not surprised. It's really good. You're very talented.
I've had people say it's the best book they ever read. People say he's a genius.
Yeah.
People say all kinds of things. Keep writing.
Yeah.
We want more.
Awesome.
Things like that. So
fantastic.
Yeah. Then online, on Facebook, I have people contact me. Some of them I still keep in contact with, but people contact me. They'll say things like, you really helped me out so much because now I understand my son, or I understand my daughter, or I understand my sister, things like that. So,
that's fantastic.
Yes, I get a lot.
What a profound impact that you can have on people.
Yes.
Directly and indirectly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it seems, actually, I have more of an impact on family members than I actually do people who have the actual illness. Yes. So family members really, really appreciate the work that I do. And also therapists as well. They find it useful because they can see firsthand how we think, how we feel, how we process. So I'm giving them invaluable information and information that they would not readily have just dealing with their clients.
And I think that professionals receive a certain type of training that's focused on diagnoses, medications, symptoms, and although, to your point, the system has evolved, I think it has not evolved as much as it could, and many people who work in the field, practitioners, still have a hard time looking at people as people. It sounds like you've been fortunate in finding a therapist who does, but not everybody does. I think some still kind of put people in categories and focus on symptoms and conditions more than actual people, understanding that a set of symptoms is part of what people experience, but it doesn't define the whole.
I've been blessed to have the therapist that I have now. And the thing about it is, she actually learns from me. So she doesn't just teach me, but she learns from me as well. And sometimes at the end of the session, when we're wrapping it up, she always asks me, "What did you get from today's session?" And sometimes I'll ask her, what did she get?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It should be. Yep.
That's the kind of rapport that we have.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's really as it should be. We're all human beings. We're all people just trying to help each other.
Yes.
And to exchange some knowledge and some wisdom and help each other along the way. But no one has all the answers, that's for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What you mentioned, the system has evolved, and I agree with you. Naturally, we look at it through different vantage points, but it's still far from perfect. What else would you like to see the system do, or what would you like to see be done to the system to continue that trend of improvement?
I would like to see support in faith-based clients. Yes.
It sounds like spirituality has played a pretty significant role in your life and your recovery.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my therapist is well aware of it.
Okay.
And she supports it.
Good.
So I even said, like, well, if I'm going through something, she'll say, "Okay, pray." Okay. I've never experienced that before.
That's
because
fantastic.
yes, people in the system notoriously have frowned upon their clients being faith-based or believing in God, believe it or not, because they would consider that being delusional, which is inhumane.
Sure. I mean, when you consider that the vast majority of people in this world, are spiritual in some way. Throughout the world, there are different belief systems, different sacred texts and so forth. But most people, do subscribe to some belief in a higher power. So, to consider that delusional is, as you said, patently false. But you're right. I think the system kind of tends to draw a bright line between treatment and spirituality. And back to the earlier point, if you're going to embrace people as people, as whole people, you have to know that we all have conditions. We all have our belief systems, our philosophies, and you can't separate one from the other if you're really going to nurture the recovery process. I think there's been, in recent years, I've seen more of a recognition of the importance of spirituality and faith-based approaches. We have a long way to go, to be sure, but I don't think it's considered as forbidden as it once was. But I can understand your point about that. It's so critical to recovery.
Yes, definitely. And also, I like to see more. I'm using the correct terminology. Individual-based therapy, which means that therapy according to that individual's situation, their needs, their wants, their desires, their feelings, because we're not all the same.
Of course.
We were treated that way in the beginning, schizophrenics were given Thorazine.
Right.
Manic depressives were given lithium. I would treat it like just
Treated according to your diagnosis rather than according to all the complexity that makes you a
who you are as an
individual.
individual.
Right? Yeah, we often draw a parallel between, we often draw a parallel or make an analogy to, let's say, a medical condition such as diabetes. You wouldn't think of diabetes as defining someone. You would consider someone who has diabetes as having a medical condition. They might need insulin. They might need to modify their diet. They might need more exercise. But it's just part of their life. It's not who they are.
Yeah.
I think mental health historically has looked at a mental illness as a defining characteristic, and it's just one component of what people experience.
That's one thing I'm not sure if anybody else has said it, but I've come up with a few sayings. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I said some time ago, simply said, I am not my mental illness. So, yes.
Absolutely. I think in language we've seen an evolution in recognition of that too. Once upon a time, it wasn't uncommon for clinicians to refer to people as manic depressives or schizophrenics or bipolars or what have you. Nowadays, I think more and more clinicians are recognizing that that's not a appropriate or helpful way to describe or define people. You could say it's someone who has a diagnosis of this or a diagnosis of that, just like it's someone who has brown eyes or someone who likes sports or someone who goes to this church or that. It's a characteristic, but it's not a definition. Yeah. It's not an identity.
Well, it's different as snowflakes.
Absolutely, of course, all of us are. Yeah, and you're right. I think we have a ways to go to fully recognize that. Better than it was, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
What are you put a lot into your work, and it sounds like that's important to you. What are your goals as far as your writing is concerned? Do you have additional goals? What do you hope to do with it over the next few years?
Well, of course, I like to make as many sales as possible.
Of course.
But just continue to bring knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to people who may not understand mental illness or are curious about what mental illness is, or a therapist, doctor who wants to learn more about treating their patients, people with the illness, having somebody to identify with, things like that. I just want to do more of that, basically.
Very important work, and you're already doing it.
Yes, I'm very adamant when it comes to my work.
Well, I think as we discussed, and we'll talk about it more, there's opportunities, should you choose to pursue them, for you to use some of that wisdom, to support the Search for Change community, people who are in support housing, people who might be in our job support program, people who are just looking, for that voice of wisdom, because they hear it from us, they hear it from other professionals, they hear it from family and others, but to hear somebody who has traveled the road such as yours, who's gained that wisdom through the school of hard knocks, is so impactful, so meaningful. So I'd love to help you to broaden that forum.
And I also would love to see organizations like Search for Change, of course, HSW, MHA, all these different organizations. I'd like to see them promote my work as a way of helping and not just selling books, but actually helping the community, because that's what I think my work does. It helps, it heals,
it really does.
Things like that. So I would love, especially for a large organization like NAMI, I would love for them to promote my work or have me interviewed, put on their website, their social media, things like that. I would love. I want everybody to actually. I want to touch everybody I possibly can, because this is a fact. Everybody in this world has had some kind of influence when it comes to mental illness, whether it be personal, whether it be family, whether it be, mental illness is as prevalent as the common cold. That's the truth.
Yeah, and we see it more and more.
Yeah.
Perhaps even more so nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see, especially during the pandemic, a lot of even doctors, nurses have been diagnosed.
Sure.
Things like that. Sad to say, quite a few of them have actually taken their lives because of it.
Those professions are very stressful. And that's part of it, but I think you're right. Society has become more stressful, life's become more stressful, and the pandemic just exacerbated all those underlying stressors. And for people who are in stressful professions, and just anyone who's trying to make it through this life unscathed, it's become harder and harder. So you're right, it's important for us to have more awareness of it, and more awareness of the triggers, and more awareness of things that can help. And it's not always about just conventional treatment. As you said, it's about spirituality, it's about connection, it's about all those things that we often take for granted but don't realize are so integral to our health.
Yeah. Now, I may have had these breakdowns during the pandemic, but I think it's a testament to my strength that I was able to make it through.
Well, when I listened to your poems, a couple of things came through to me, a couple of overarching themes. One, the pain, the stress, the horrors of the illness, and of all the life experiences that were visited upon you when you were first getting treated, but also that resilience, because you clearly have come out on the other side, not without ongoing stressors and not without ongoing ups and downs. As you said, any of this darkness can emerge at any point in time. There's no guarantees that everything will proceed smoothly in the future, but it was clear to me in listening to your poetry that you've acquired a wisdom and a resilience and an understanding of what you need to do to stay as healthy as possible. I mean, your life is a testament to that. Even for the mere fact that at a pretty young age, you were able to put drugs and alcohol behind you, embrace treatment, accept medication, and just really try to do the best that you can to stay healthy. And not everybody does that, as you know. A lot of people go throughout their entire life continuing to abuse drugs, going on and off medication, not being able to maintain housing, but you did the hard work and you were able to put a lot of those tribulations behind you.
Well, it started with self-change, right? Absolutely. They're the ones who helped me move from a halfway house to a supported level 2 housing to level 3 housing. And eventually, they were the ones who helped me actually get my first apartment. Camilla had a lot to do with it.
I'm sure she did. I have no doubt. And I'm glad Search for Change was there for you, and I'm sure you got a lot of help from Search for Change and those key influences in your life like Ron and Camilla. You also had to be ready to do the work because there are a lot of people who come and go from Search for Change, and some people make great strides and are able to embrace recovery, make progress. Not everyone does. Some people choose to leave. Some people just drop out. Some people fall by the wayside for whatever reason, despite our best efforts, because they may not have the wherewithal to do the work. They may not be ready for it. And sometimes people will come, go, come back. As we know, recovery is not a linear process, but for people to really get the most of it, they have to be ready, willing, and able to do the work and to put forth the effort. And you clearly did that. So it's a real partnership. I'm glad that we could be there for you. But maturity too, absolutely, big piece of it. You're right. You've got to get to a point in life where you are mature enough to recognize that things that interested you when you were younger don't really work so well when you get to be older. It's amazing what you've done. I mean, I hope you're proud of it. You should be. Certainly, I know Ron's smiling down is proud of you. I know Camilla is. I certainly am. I know we haven't worked together in the way that you have with others, but just knowing how much you've done is really inspiring to me. And I've been thinking, since you reached out to me, and even more today, about different ways that we can help you to engage a broader audience, because you have a very important message and very important work, and clearly it made an impact on the online community. But I think there's other ways that we can introduce you to other individuals, organizations, family members, recipients, people who would benefit from what you have to share?
That would be much appreciated.
Do you continue to have moments in which you find it hard to distinguish between what's real and what might be a delusional idea?
That's funny. We were just talking about that. Me and my therapist yesterday on Tuesday. We had a meeting, and I was telling her for years, I mean literally for years, I actually thought I was God. I mean, the Almighty God.
Because everything would point back to you, and you would feel as if you were at the center of everything.
Yeah. I even had an obsessive compulsive type thing where it would go in threes for me.
Okay.
And I wrote a poem called Rituals. And the numbers 1, 2, 3 mean something to me.
Okay.
So when I see something in that sequence, it means something.
Got it.
Do you know what it means?
What does it mean?
I am God.
So when you see 1, 2, 3, or a sequence of 1, 2, 3, to you it means you are God.
Yes.
Is there anything else you want to share?
Well, let me see. I appreciate people today. I really do. I accept help. I'm just an entirely different human being at this point. There was a time because I had what they call borderline personality disorder, and I participated in some very reckless activities. Not just drugs and the alcohol, but being hypersexual, promiscuity, mental abuse towards others. So I just like to say that I'm not that person anymore. I've grown up, and the point that I did grow up and start growing up was 2004, as I mentioned to you.
Gotcha. So that was a real turning point.
That was a turning point.
A pivotal point in your life.
Yes. I stopped the reckless behavior. Yes.
Sounded like you'd made quite a bit of progress before then, but perhaps you hadn't fully overcome, as you said, that reckless behavior or those habits that derailed you, but something happened in 2004 that changed the trajectory of your life.
I quit smoking in 2005.
Good for you.
I was a terrible smoker. I mean, I was smoking over 2 packs a day.
Whoa.
And everything revolved around cigarettes for me.
If you continued smoking at that rate, we probably wouldn't be sitting here right now, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
My doctor says I put on an extra 10, 15 years of my life.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was at that point that I had quit.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I'm very proud of that I've done. But things have changed for me. A lot of people remember me to be a certain way.
Yeah.
But what I'd like for people to take from this interview is that people evolve and they change. They get better. And I've gotten so much better.
I can tell you, I think that comes through very clearly. I mean, knowing what I know about your life story, it does, but even in the hour or so that you've been sitting here talking, I think it's come through very clearly that your life has changed and changed for the better. And it doesn't mean the journey's over, right? It's as long as we are drawing breaths, we're continuing to learn and to grow and to gain wisdom if we apply ourselves, and you clearly do, and it's clear that you have made great strides and you have a message to share with others that I think will help to nurture them along too.
Absolutely.
Great, Tim. This has been a pleasure, and I really appreciate your time. What I'd love to do, as I said, is to transcribe this, into kind of a detailed written format, send it to you. If you're okay with it, we'll publish it on our website, and then I want to give some thought to how we can introduce you to other people, organizations, your written materials, your books, your audio books, because I think you have a powerful and compelling message to share with the world.
Sure.
And I'd love to help you to expand it to additional audiences.
Definitely.
Great. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, my pleasure. Again, I'm glad we finally came together. I'm sorry we had to reschedule a couple of times, but that's life, but better late than never.
Things happen.
Yeah, they do.